the partner of Allied Venture, to share his success story from a background of consultancy to a variety of subjects. He would share with us his experiences and his success story in the public view. Dave, your turn.
On a flight from Dubai to Delhi, Roberto, a South American, was sitting next to Ranbir, a farmer from India. When Ranbir realized that Roberto was visiting India for the first time, he invited him to visit his farm in the Punjab, India's grain basket. After a day of touring, Ranbir proudly demonstrated how India had transformed its agricultural landscape and went from being a net food importer in the 1960s to being self-sufficient in food in the 70s and 80s, and then being a net exporter. Roberto was visibly impressed, and he said, "Ranbir, you have to visit me in South America, and I too happen to be a farmer." And Roberto, for your information, was an Argentine, and in his own humble way, humildemente, dice que at 8 o'clock in the morning when I get in my truck to drive across my farm, at 11 a.m. I still haven't reached the end of it. At this point, Ranbir looked at Roberto very pitifully and, like an Uruguayan, said to him, "I'm very sorry to hear that, my friend. My father had a truck like that a long time ago." Señor Embajador Ferrer, autoridades, señores empresarios, ladies and gentlemen. I maintain our worldview determines our reality. And in this era of the 21st century, we have to change our worldview to reflect the new reality. And that is the South is the new North. El mundo no es plano, es al revés. The countries of the global South, now known as emerging markets, will drive growth and opportunity for the next few decades. The great Uruguayan essayist Jose Rodo, more than 100 years ago, exhorted the youth of Latin America to reject materialism, to not have this Nordomania, obsession with North America, and embrace classical values. I'm happy to be part of a very youthful Uruguayan delegation that has taken his words to heart 100 years later. Now we are on a business mission to India looking for new opportunities. It's been said business partners, like a spouse, should be like dessert, sweet and rich. So the Uruguayans have indeed come to the right place, porque los indios son mucho más ricos que los porteños y muchos más amables. Well, our sweet and rich friends have a problem going forward because with the rising income, the opportunity to produce food in India is shrinking and reducing. And so Indian companies are looking overseas to feed this growing food demand. You know, the agriculture sector in India is a little out of balance. You know, the Economy is growing about 8 or 9%, but the agriculture sector growth rate is only close to 2%. So something has to change, and Indian entrepreneurs are taking the lead in looking at overseas opportunities.
This year, the agriculture in India increased as well as with the past.
Yes. And if you look specifically, the crisis in India is in two areas. I mean, three areas here. In edible oils, in pulses, which are lentils, legumbres, and sugar. And India, over the last decade, has imported more and more quantities of these commodities from South America. And now, Indian companies are going overseas to invest more to grow these commodities. And we call it agriculture outsourcing. Just like India in IT software and China in IT hardware, South America can be the world's, and India specifically, agriculture outsourcing hub. The economics of agriculture in this region, as you all know, my Uruguayan friends, is very compelling. So what we essentially want to do is what Gabriel Rosman did in IT in Uruguay starting in 2002. We are positioning Uruguay as a springboard for Indian companies to enter Latin America. And we want to position Uruguay as a laboratory for agricultural and agribusiness projects. And Indian companies have been very receptive to this. We have had a lot of consulting clients in the edible oil space, the Solvent Extractor Association of India, companies like Ruchi Soya and soybeans, KS Oils, who have used our agricultural expertise and have come to Uruguay. Of course, before, these companies were considering Africa, and some of them still are, but we have positioned Uruguay is the best place to start overseas. And the reason is fourfold. Essentially, to produce a tasty meal, you need four things. You need ingredients, you need recipes, you need cooks and implements. And Indian companies have now realized, due to us, that Uruguay has all four. What do I mean by that? I'll quickly go over this. Uruguay is a water paradise. The average per capita water resources in Uruguay is 20 times as much as India. And as was previously mentioned in the morning, Uruguay is the 7th biggest world exporter of rice. And rice, to produce 1 ton of rice, you need 5 million liters of water. And Uruguay is a good place to do this. And of course, you have abundant farmland, arable land, because Uruguay is the size of is about the Indian state of Gujarat, but less than half the population of Ahmedabad. So there's plenty of arable land. And then we talk of recipes. Some of these Indian companies going to Africa, they think land is land, water is water. And we've shown them that's not the case. So for agriculture, which demands large capital investments and large energy resources, you also need supporting infrastructure, like roads, like ports, like grain silos. And just like in cooking recipes, a cooking recipe that is available to me is also available to you. So it's a public good. And we need that investment in public goods that Uruguay has that makes it a very good place. And besides this, what I call hard infrastructure, you also have soft infrastructure, rule of law, property rights. I'm reminded of this joke I was told in Uruguay, like an Uruguayan mother was congratulated that her son had become the next president of Uruguay. And then she remarked, "What's so big about that? I have 2 other sons, one a partner at Guyer and Regules, and the other a partner at Ferrer." So the law is taken very seriously in Uruguay, and property rights are enforced. And besides that, you have a very strong banking infrastructure. And so these are some of the soft recipes or soft infrastructure that becomes very important while doing business overseas. And Indian companies are coming to realize this. And besides this, you have technology, tools and technology, things like harvesters and combines and systems like no-till drill, which conserve soil. That's being utilized. So not surprisingly, Uruguay has some of the has growing yields in crops, and for rice, it has some of the highest yields in the world. And this is coming to be recognized. The country as a whole, to step back, of course, people in the morning talked about the investment incentives, the various leading positions it has in terms of being low corruption, high quality of life, and things like that. I'd like to take a step back at the meta level. Uruguay has a sun on its flag. Indians should find this appealing. Every day they do Surya Namaskar, sun salutations, because the sun is a driver of their agriculture business. And besides this, I talked about the institutional infrastructure. One of the things to us, which is most appealing from an Indian perspective of Uruguay, especially in its context. Indians see South America as a place of revolutionaries. These populist leaders who are always railing against foreign investment. They want the state to control everything. But we feel Uruguay has, in its own way, created a revolution by appointing His Excellency Contador Danilo Astori to be Vice President. To appoint an accountant to balance a government budget is a revolutionary act, we think. And this government has been very successful in reducing the deficit as percentage of GDP over the last few years. So it's a very well-managed economy. And you can also liken them to, in a way, being post-ideological. They're more focused on what works, almost like a DTC bus driver who signals left but turns right. So in a way to include all aspects of society, they do what is right and what is required to have an effective economy. And of course, we talked about inclusive growth, and that's a challenge in both Uruguay and India, and we think it all starts at the agriculture sector. In India, 70% of the Indian economy is employed in agriculture. In Uruguay, though it's under 10%, it accounts for over 70% of exports. So having the agricultural sector be sustainable is we think the key going forward for economic growth. And India can learn a lot from the example of Uruguay and how to organize the ecosystem. Of course, Minister Scindia said this. So you have a very strong ecosystem in Uruguay, which is entirely private sector driven. The government is more referee or a facilitator of business rather than being involved in business itself. And that's very attractive for Indian entrepreneurs who are used to operating in a very free market environment, but with solid regulation and rule of law. And so the question is, how can these diverse countries, so far away in geography, so different in almost culture, go forward? And one with a very low population of 3 million, and India is having 1.5 billion. We think there is huge opportunity for collaboration because there's shared values. I mean, both India and Uruguay are democracies, pluralistic societies, and where there's a strong focus on institutional stability beyond what political parties in power. And this is very important and gives comfort to businessmen. And besides this, Uruguay, Rampala Gandhi, right? The main street in Montevideo is named after Gandhi. There's peaceful transitions of power, and this is very attractive. Every Indian who's come to Uruguay with us is amazed at how peaceful and safe and secure it is, and we've taken them to all parts of the country, and so that's very appealing. And so, how to build on this? How to take this forward. And we think these shared values is a good platform to take it forward. One of the things we found out working with Indian clients is that there are two things you need to work with India. The spirit of sacrifice. Sacrifice is a very strong value in Indian culture. Buyers expect customers to sacrifice, come to them many times, give them offers, take them out to dinner, mucha vuelta. Right? So this, spirit of sacrifice is one. And the second is this concept of endurance or perseverance. India, as was mentioned before, is a country which believes in evolutionary change. Things kind of happen slowly. You can't turn the switch and have the lights on in one shot. You slowly have to turn the switch. It's almost like a dimmer philosophy. And we think Uruguayans are well equipped. They have good background to do this. Sacrifice, because every year they sacrifice their country to the millions of Argentines who stream into it. And then endurance. They have to endure Argentine economic policies. So we think they are ideally positioned to work with India. And bottom line, from an investor standpoint, Uruguay combines the best of what Indian businessmen know, Mauritius as a way for company formation, bringing in foreign direct investment, having a legal framework combined with political stability. In Switzerland, stable democracy, peaceful transitions of power, and New Zealand's opportunities in the dairy sector, in agriculture and dairy. So we think it offers the best of these countries at a value for money price that Indians would love, and we are very close to announcing some agreements with Indian companies beyond just the consultant. And overall, the outlook in Uruguay is very bullish for agribusiness beyond contract farming. There's opportunities in food processing, oilseed crushing, and for every Indian company we've talked to, they've always emphasized that they don't want to get into the landowning business, but they want locals to handle that. They want to put up crushing facilities, food processing facilities, fruit processing facilities, and target not just India or Asia, but third countries. Exactly like what happened with TCS in Uruguay, using Uruguay as a platform to serve Europe, West Africa, Middle East, its traditional markets, but having a tighter and stronger link with buyers. Indian buying networks spread all across Asia, Middle East, and Africa, and by being based in Uruguay and as a base for South America, they can really tighten this buying relationship. And for those who think they're late to the game or late to the party, I think there's still time. Like they say, el mejor momento para plantar un árbol fue hace 20 años, pero el segundo mejor momento es ahora. So, and just like the person from the start of the story, Baldev, he's on the phone with his travel agent, buying a ticket to Uruguay. Thank you very much.